The sun peeked through the thin curtains in May's small bedroom. Her eyes fluttered open as the warm light touched her face. Another day, another chance to dream about music. May had just turned 16 last week, but her love for piano music had been with her for as long as she could remember. Growing up in a household where every penny mattered, May understood why piano lessons weren't an option. Her mom worked 2 jobs to keep their apartment, and her older brother had just started college on a partial scholarship. Luxuries like music lessons simply didn't fit into the family budget, but that never stopped May from trying. Every Saturday morning for the past 3 years, May would wake up early and take the bus downtown to Golden Gate Mall. There, near the food court, sat an old upright piano. The mall owners had placed it there as part of a community arts initiative, allowing anyone to play. Most people just plunked random keys as they walked by, but for May, this was her classroom. She would sit for hours, watching tutorial videos on her second-hand phone, trying to match her fingers to the movement she saw on screen. Week after week, month after month, May taught herself. Sometimes, when the mall was nearly empty, elderly shoppers would stop and listen, occasionally dropping $1 or $2 beside her. May never asked for money, but she accepted these gifts with deep gratitude, saving every cent for sheet music she printed at the library. "You have a gift," an old man once told her after she finished playing a simple version of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. May wasn't sure if she had a gift, but she definitely had determination. At home, when she couldn't practice on a real piano, May drew a keyboard on a large piece of cardboard. She would sit at her desk, moving her fingers across the silent keys, hearing the music in her mind. Her mom would sometimes watch from the doorway, a mixture of pride and sadness in her eyes, wishing she could give her daughter more. One day, her mom would say, "You'll have your own piano, I promise." May never complained. She understood their situation and was grateful for what she had: a loving family, a roof over her head, and those precious hours at the mall piano. At school, things were different. Riverdale High was known for its excellent music program, but May wasn't part of it. The students who took music classes came from families who could afford private lessons since elementary school. They carried themselves with a confidence that May envied, discussing composers and concerts that seemed from another world. The popular girls, Lily, Zoe, and Priya, were all in the advanced orchestra class. They never directly made fun of May, but their dismissive glances when she mentioned loving classical music stung all the same. "You need to start when you're like 5 to be any good," Lily had said once during lunch when May had shyly admitted her dream of playing piano professionally. "Otherwise your brain just can't develop the right way." May had nodded and changed the subject, but inside, she wondered if Lily was right. Was she just fooling herself with her mall piano sessions and cardboard keyboard? But everything changed one Friday morning when Ms. Wang, their literature teacher, made an announcement that sent a ripple of excitement through the classroom. "Next week, we have a special opportunity," Ms. Wang said, pushing her glasses up her nose. "The National Conservatory of Music is hosting an open house for local schools, and our class has been selected to attend." Whispers erupted around the room. The National Conservatory was prestigious, a place where only the most talented musicians studied. Located in a historic building downtown, it rarely opened its doors to the public. They're unveiling a new concert grand piano that was donated by a famous pianist, Ms. Wang continued. "We'll get a tour of the facilities, meet some students and faculty, and learn about career opportunities in music." The classroom buzzed with excitement. May felt her heart race. The National Conservatory. She had walked by the beautiful building many times but never imagined she would get to go inside. "Remember to return your permission slips by Monday," Ms. Wang called out as the bell rang. "This is a remarkable opportunity, so please don't miss it." All weekend, May could hardly focus on anything else. She spent even longer at the mall piano, practicing harder than ever. An elderly couple stopped to listen to her play Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece she had been working on for months. When she finished, they applauded warmly. "You play with such feeling," the woman told her. "It's not just about hitting the right notes, you know. It's about what you put into them." Her words stayed with May long after she returned home. That night, as she practiced on her cardboard keyboard, she wondered what it would be like to play on a real concert grand piano, the kind they would see at the conservatory. The morning of the field trip arrived with clear skies and mild weather. May wore her nicest clothes, dark blue jeans without any tears and a simple cream-colored sweater her aunt had given her for her birthday. She had spent extra time on her hair, pulling it back with a blue clip that matched her jeans. On the bus, students chatted excitedly about the trip. The music students sitting near the front talked about the famous pianists who had performed at the conservatory. "My piano teacher studied there," Zoe mentioned loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She says they only accept like 2% of applicants." "My brother's friend auditioned twice and didn't get in," another student added. "He ended up going to Eastman instead." May sat quietly near the back looking out the window. She recognized the names they were dropping, famous music schools she had researched online during late nights when sleep wouldn't come. Schools she knew she could never afford, even if she somehow developed enough talent to be accepted. The conservatory building was even more beautiful up close, a stone structure with tall windows and intricate carvings around the entrance. A banner announcing the open house hung above the massive wooden doors. "Remember to be on your best behavior," Ms. Wang reminded them as they filed off the bus. "This is a place of serious study." Inside, the entrance hall took May's breath away. The ceiling soared above them, with a crystal chandelier casting rainbow reflections on the polished marble floor. Black and white photographs of famous musicians lined the walls, their serious faces watching the visitors enter their domain. A woman with short silver hair and perfect posture greeted them. "Welcome to the National Conservatory of Music. I'm Dr. Harper, the Director of Admissions. We're delighted to have you visit us today." Dr. Harper led them through corridors where music spilled from practice rooms, violin scales, trumpet blasts, and piano arpeggios blending into a chaotic symphony. Students carrying instrument cases nodded politely as they passed. "The conservatory was founded in 1891, Dr. Harper explained as they walked. "Many of the world's finest musicians have studied within these walls. We currently have 320 students from 27 countries." The tour continued through a library with thousands of scores and music books, a small recital hall where a string quartet was rehearsing, and a technology lab where students composed using computers and synthesizers. Finally, they reached the main concert hall, a majestic space with tiered seating and a stage that seemed to glow under the perfect lighting. And there, in the center of the stage, stood the most beautiful piano May had ever seen. "This is our newest treasure," Dr. Harper said with evident pride, "a Steinway Model D concert grand, generously donated by the world-renowned pianist Anton Yelovich. It is valued at over $180,000 and was handcrafted in Hamburg, Germany." The piano gleamed under the lights, its black surface so perfectly polished it looked wet. The lid was raised, revealing the complex inner workings, strings and hammers arranged with mathematical precision. While Dr. Harper continued talking about the piano's specifications, May couldn't take her eyes off it. The keys, ivory-colored white ones and ebony black ones, seemed to call to her fingers. What would it feel like to play such an instrument? How would it sound? Would the notes ring differently than on the worn mall piano she practiced on? The group moved closer to the stage for a better look. Dr. Harper explained how each Steinway was unique, with its own voice and character. Then she checked her watch and frowned slightly. "Our student demonstrator is running late," she said. "He was supposed to play a short piece to show off the piano's capabilities. Ms. Wang, would you excuse me for just a moment? I need to make a quick call to see where he is." As Dr. Harper stepped away to use her phone, the students began to mill around the edge of the stage. Some took photos of the magnificent piano, while others gazed around the concert hall. May found herself drifting closer to the stage, drawn to the piano like a magnet. Without fully realizing what she was doing, she climbed the 3 steps to the stage and approached the instrument. Standing beside it now, she could see her distorted reflection in its surface. "What are you doing?" Zoe's voice cut through May's trance. "We're not supposed to touch anything." But May barely heard her. All she could think about was how this piano, this masterpiece of craftsmanship, made music. The same keys, the same basic mechanism as the mall piano, just perfected to the highest standard. Suddenly, she felt a presence beside her. Turning, she saw Dr. Harper had returned and was looking at her with a curious expression. "Do you play?" Dr. Harper asked, her voice neither approving nor disapproving. Before May could answer, someone snickered from the group of students watching from below. Then another laugh, barely disguised as a cough. "She practices at the mall piano. Someone whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Heat rushed to May's face, but something kept her from stepping away from the piano. Perhaps it was all those Saturday mornings, all those hours of practicing on a cardboard keyboard, or maybe it was the memory of the elderly woman who told her it was about what you put into the notes. I try to, May answered honestly, meeting Dr. Harper's gaze. I've never had lessons, but I love to play. More whispers from below. More stifled laughs. Even Ms. Wang looked uncomfortable. Dr. Harper's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Well, our demonstrator seems to be delayed in traffic. Perhaps you'd like to try it. Just a few notes to feel the action of the keys. May's heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it echoing in the concert hall. This was her chance, perhaps her only chance, to touch a piano like this. With trembling legs, she moved to the bench and sat down, adjusting her position as she always did at the mall piano. The bench was more comfortable, the height more perfect than she was used to. She placed her hands on the keys, marveling at their cool smoothness under her fingertips. The laughing had grown louder now, and she could hear Lily stage whispering, "This is going to be so embarrassing." But as May took a deep breath and pressed the first key, something unexpected happened. The note rang out with a clarity and richness she had never experienced before. It was as if she had only heard echoes of piano music until this moment, and now she was hearing the real thing for the first time. And in that moment, with the perfect sound still hanging in the air, May made a decision that would change everything. The world around May seemed to fade away as her fingers hovered over the keys of the magnificent grand piano. The whispers and giggles from her classmates grew distant, like sounds from another room. In this moment, there was only May and the piano, this beautiful instrument that felt both foreign and familiar at the same time. She closed her eyes briefly, gathering her courage. What should she play? Her mind raced through the pieces she had taught herself. Something simple would be safer, but something inside her wanted to show what she could really do, even if she made mistakes. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major flowed from her fingers. The sound was so pure, so rich that it startled her. On the mall piano, she had to press harder to get the keys to respond properly. Here, the slightest touch created music. She adjusted quickly, her fingers becoming lighter, more precise. The laughter from below faded completely as the beautiful melody filled the concert hall. May felt the music moving through her, the gentle, dreamy opening theme that had first captured her heart when she'd heard it in a movie years ago. She had spent countless hours trying to master it on the mall piano, and now, on this perfect instrument, the piece seemed to play itself. Dr. Harper stood motionless at the side of the stage, her expression unreadable. Ms. Wang's mouth had fallen slightly open, and May's classmates, even Lily, Zoe, and Priya, watched in stunned silence as their supposedly untrained classmate played a challenging piece of classical music with evident skill and feeling. As May moved into the middle section of the piece, she found the courage to open her eyes. The piano responded to her touch as if it understood what she wanted, as if they were having a conversation only the two of them could understand. The notes danced and flowed, filling the concert hall with emotions May could never express in words. She wasn't playing perfectly. Her lack of formal training showed in certain transitions, and once or twice her fingers stumbled on the more complex passages. But there was something in her playing that transcended technique, a raw emotion, a genuine love for the music that couldn't be taught. As the piece came to its gentle conclusion, May held the final notes, letting them fade slowly into silence. For several heartbeats, no one made a sound. The spell of the music lingered in the air, and May sat perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. Then came a single clap, followed by another, and suddenly the entire hall erupted in applause. May looked up, startled to find Dr. Harper approaching her, clapping with genuine enthusiasm. Behind her, Ms. Wang was wiping something from the corner of her eye. Even some of her classmates were applauding, their faces showing a mixture of surprise and newfound respect. "That was unexpected," Dr. Harper said, her professional composure giving way to genuine curiosity. "You've never had formal lessons?" May shook her head, suddenly shy again now that the music had stopped. "No, ma'am. I just practice at the mall piano and—" She hesitated, embarrassed to admit the rest. "And," Dr. Harper prompted gently, "and on a keyboard I drew on cardboard, for when I can't get to the mall." Someone in the audience gasped. Dr. Harper's eyebrows rose slightly. You learned to play Chopin like that without a teacher? Without a real piano at home? May nodded, heat rising to her cheeks again, but this time not from embarrassment. There was something like pride blooming in her chest, a feeling she wasn't very familiar with. It wasn't very good, she said softly. I made mistakes. We all make mistakes, Dr. Harper replied. Even our most advanced students. But what you just did, she paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. What you just did shows remarkable talent and determination. From the audience, Ms. Wong called out, May, I had no idea you could play like that. Why haven't you ever joined the school music program? Before May could answer, a tall man with salt and pepper hair hurried into the concert hall, slightly out of breath. He carried a leather briefcase and wore a rumpled suit that somehow still looked expensive. Dr. Harper, I apologize for my tardiness. The traffic was absolutely dreadful, and then parking. He stopped abruptly, noticing May still sitting at the piano. Oh, I see you found another demonstrator. One of your students? Dr. Harper turned to the man with a small smile. Professor Abramowitz, this is May. She's not one of our students, at least not yet. She's visiting with her high school class and just gave us quite a performance. Professor Abramowitz approached the piano, setting his briefcase down. Did she now? And what did you play for us, young lady? Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, May answered, her voice barely above a whisper. Opus 9, number 2, he nodded. A beautiful piece, and a fine choice for this instrument. He turned to Dr. Harper. So our new Steinway has been properly welcomed then? Indeed it has, Dr. Harper said, and in quite an unexpected way. She turned back to May. Would you mind playing something else for Professor Abramowitz? He's the head of our piano department. May's heart jumped into her throat. The head of the piano department? She was just a girl who played on a mall piano. She wasn't ready to perform for someone like him. But when she looked at the professor's kind eyes, something gave her courage. She nodded and turned back to the keys. This time she chose a piece she felt more confident with, Debussy's Clair de Lune, the same one she had played for the elderly couple at the mall. As she began to play, she noticed Professor Abramowitz watching her hands intently, unlike her first performance when she had been overwhelmed by the piano's response. This time May was more prepared for the sensitive touch of the keys. She leaned into the music, feeling the gentle rise and fall of the melody, trying to capture the moonlight quality that gave the piece its name. When she finished, Professor Abramowitz was nodding slowly, his expression thoughtful. You have unusual fingering, he observed. Self-taught? May nodded, wondering if that was a criticism. Yes, sir. I watch videos online and try to copy what I see. Remarkable, he murmured. Your hand position isn't what I would teach. And yet, he glanced at Dr. Harper. There's something quite special here. From the audience, May's classmates were watching with varying expressions of disbelief. Zoe's mouth was still hanging slightly open. Lily was recording everything on her phone, and Priya was whispering something to the girl next to her, gesturing animatedly toward the stage. May I ask how long you've been playing? Professor Abramowitz asked. About 3 years, May answered, but only on weekends mostly. That's when I can get to the mall piano. Professor Abramowitz and Dr. Harper exchanged glances that May couldn't quite interpret. And you've taught yourself these complex pieces just from watching videos? Dr. Harper asked. That's highly unusual. May nodded, beginning to feel self-conscious again under their scrutiny. I practice the fingerings at home on my cardboard keyboard. I can hear the music in my head while I do it. Professor Abramowitz's eyebrows shot up. You have perfect pitch? I don't know what that means, May admitted. It means you can hear notes accurately in your mind, he explained. It's a rare gift. May shrugged slightly. The notes just make sense to me, like they have colors or feelings attached to them. This time, the look that passed between the two faculty members was unmistakable. They were impressed. Professor Abramowitz pulled a chair closer to the piano bench and sat down. May, would you mind if I played something, and you tried to play it back to me? Just a short phrase? May nodded, suddenly nervous again. This felt like a test. Professor Abramowitz turned to the piano and played a complex sequence of about 10 notes, a melody May had never heard before. The notes hung in the air for a moment, and then he gestured to her. Taking a deep breath, May placed her hands on the keys and replayed the sequence. It wasn't perfect. She hesitated once, but she captured the essence of what he had played. The professor's eyes widened slightly. He played another sequence, this one longer and more complex. Again, May listened carefully and then repeated it, this time more confidently. "Remarkable," Professor Abramovitz said softly. He looked over to Dr. Harper. "Patricia, I think we should have a conversation with this young lady and her teacher." Ms. Wang stepped forward from the audience. "I'm her literature teacher. Mai isn't in our music program." The confusion on Professor Abramovitz's face would have been comical under different circumstances. Not in the music program? With this level of natural ability? Ms. Wang looked somewhat embarrassed. "We weren't aware of her talents." From the side of the stage, a younger man appeared, the student who had been scheduled to demonstrate the piano, May guessed. He was carrying sheet music and looked confused about why his role had been usurped. Dr. Harper motioned for him to wait, then turned back to May. "I think we need to continue this conversation, but perhaps we should let the rest of the tour proceed. Would you be willing to stay afterward and speak with us more? We'll make sure you get back to your school." May looked uncertainly at Ms. Wang, who nodded encouragingly. "Of course, that would be fine. I'll call your mother and explain." As May stood up from the piano bench, her legs felt wobbly. What had just happened? One moment she had been the girl who practiced on a mall piano, and the next she was being asked to stay behind to talk with the director of admissions and the head of the piano department at the National Conservatory. Her classmates were looking at her differently now. As she stepped down from the stage, Priya approached her. "That was amazing," she said, her voice sincere for the first time since May had known her. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone you could play like that?" May shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. Nobody ever asked. The scheduled student demonstrator had taken his place at the piano now and was preparing to play. Dr. Harper was guiding May's classmates to the next part of the tour, but May noticed that many of them kept looking back at her with new eyes. As the group moved toward the door, Lily approached, her phone still in her hand. "I recorded your performance," she said, her tone difficult to read. "It's already got like 50 views on my story." May wasn't sure if she should be grateful or mortified. "You posted it online?" "Yeah," Lily said with a shrug. "People need to see this. It's actually really good." Before May could respond, Ms. Wang called for the students to follow her. Lily rejoined the group, leaving May standing with Professor Abramowitz and Dr. Harper. "Shall we go to my office?" Dr. Harper suggested. "I think we have quite a lot to discuss." As May followed them out of the concert hall, she glanced back at the magnificent piano one last time. Whatever happened next, she knew that something important had changed today. The girl who practiced on a cardboard keyboard had been given a chance to play on a world-class piano. And somehow, amazingly, she hadn't fallen short. For the first time, May allowed herself to wonder if her dreams of becoming a real pianist weren't so impossible after all. Dr. Harper's office was nothing like what May had imagined. Instead of the formal, intimidating space she expected, it was warm and inviting. Bookshelves lined the walls filled with music books, biographies of composers, and framed photographs. A small upright piano stood in one corner, sheet music open on its stand. Large windows overlooked a courtyard where students sat on benches, some playing instruments, others reading or chatting. May perched nervously on the edge of a comfortable chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Dr. Harper sat behind a wooden desk, while Professor Abramovitz chose to stand, occasionally pacing as he spoke. "May, what you demonstrated today was quite extraordinary," Dr. Harper began, her voice kind but serious. "I've been at this conservatory for 20 years, and I've rarely seen someone with your level of natural ability, especially without formal training." Professor Abramowitz nodded in agreement. "There are technical aspects of your playing that need refinement, certainly, but your musicality, your ear, your intuitive understanding of the emotional content of the pieces, these are things that can't be taught easily. These are gifts." May looked down at her hands, ordinary hands that had somehow created music worthy of praise from these experts. "Thank you," she said softly, unsure what else to say. "May I ask about your background?" Dr. Harper inquired. "Your family? Do your parents play?" May shook her head. "My mom doesn't play anything. She works a lot, 2 jobs. And my dad," she hesitated. "He left when I was 7. I don't know if he played music. And your interest in piano? Where did that come from?" Professor Abramovitz asked gently. May thought for a moment. There was a movie I saw when I was about 10. There was this scene with a girl playing piano, and something about it just, I don't know, spoke to me. After that, I started watching videos online, and whenever we went to the mall, I'd stop by the public piano. Eventually, I got brave enough to try it myself. And no lessons at all? Not even at school? Dr. Harper seemed still unable to believe this fact. We can't afford lessons, May said simply without self-pity. And at school, you have to already know how to play to join the music program. They don't teach beginners in high school. Dr. Harper and Professor Abramowitz exchanged another meaningful glance. May, have you ever heard of our Young Artists program? Dr. Harper asked. May shook her head. It's a scholarship program for exceptional young musicians who might not otherwise have access to quality music education, Professor Abramowitz explained. Students attend classes here on weekends and during summer breaks. They receive private lessons, music theory instruction, and performance opportunities. May's heart began to beat faster. Was this heading where she thought it might be? The program is very competitive, Dr. Harper continued. We typically hold auditions once a year, and students must prepare specific pieces and demonstrate certain technical skills. May's hope dimmed slightly. Oh well, I don't know if I... However, Professor Abramowitz interrupted. There are occasionally circumstances where we make exceptions to our usual process. Exceptions? May repeated, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. May, we would like to offer you a provisional spot in the Young Artist program, Dr. Harper said, her words careful and measured. This would include weekly private lessons with one of our piano faculty, possibly Professor Abramowitz himself, if his schedule permits, as well as classes in music theory and history. May sat completely still, afraid that if she moved or spoke, this moment might shatter like a dream upon waking. This would be a significant commitment, Professor Abramowitz added. You would need to practice several hours daily, attend classes here on Saturdays, and participate in student recitals. Your progress would be evaluated after 3 months to determine your continued participation in the program. I would practice, May said quickly, finding her voice. I already practice whenever I can. I would work harder than anyone, the professor smiled. I believe you would. But there are practical considerations as well. Transportation to and from the conservatory, for instance, and you would need access to a piano for daily practice. The mall piano simply won't be sufficient. May's excitement crashed back to earth. Of course, even with a scholarship, how would she get to lessons? And where would she practice? Her cardboard keyboard wouldn't be enough anymore. Dr. Harper seemed to read her thoughts. We have practice rooms that students can reserve, of course. But home practice is essential. I understand, May said quietly, trying to hide her disappointment. Thank you for considering me, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Professor Abramowitz interrupted gently. First, I think we should speak with your mother. These are details that can often be worked out with some creativity. Just then, there was a knock at the office door. Dr. Harper called, "Come in," and Ms. Wang entered, looking both curious and concerned. I apologize for interrupting, she said. I've brought the rest of the class back to the bus, but I wanted to check on May. Her mother is on her way here. I reached her at work, and she was quite surprised, to say the least. Excellent, Dr. Harper said. We very much want to speak with her. Ms. Wang looked at May with newfound appreciation. I had no idea you were so talented, May. Why didn't you ever mention your interest in piano? May shrugged slightly. I didn't think it mattered. I'm not in the music program. That's going to change, Ms. Wang said firmly. When we get back to school, I'm going to speak with Mr. Reynolds, the music director. There must be a way to get you involved, even mid-semester. While they waited for May's mother to arrive, Professor Abramowitz asked May more questions about her musical interests. What composers did she enjoy? Had she attempted any Bach? Any Mozart? What about more contemporary pieces? May answered as best she could, sometimes unsure of the proper terminology but clearly passionate about the music. She described how she would listen to pieces repeatedly until she could hear them in her head, then try to recreate them on the mall piano. How she would watch videos of pianists, studying their hand positions and movements, then practice on her cardboard keyboard at home. You've essentially created your own curriculum, Professor Abramowitz observed, looking impressed. Unorthodox, certainly, but effective in its own way. About 20 minutes later, there was another knock at the door. This time, when it opened, May's mother stood there, still wearing her cashier's uniform from the grocery store where she worked mornings. She looked tired and slightly overwhelmed, her eyes moving quickly from May to the two conservatory faculty members. "Mom," May jumped up. "This is Dr. Harper and Professor Abramowitz from the conservatory." "Mrs. Chen, thank you for coming," Dr. Harper said, rising to shake her hand. "We have something rather extraordinary to discuss with you about your daughter." May's mother looked confused. "Is everything okay?" "Me isn't in trouble, is she?" "Quite the opposite," Professor Abramowitz assured her. "Your daughter displayed remarkable musical talent today. We believe she has significant potential as a pianist." They explained what had happened. May's impromptu performance on the concert grand piano, her ability to play by ear, and the musical sensitivity that had impressed them both. As they spoke, May's mother's expression shifted from confusion to surprise to something like cautious pride. "May has always loved music," she said softly. "Even as a baby, she would stop crying when I played the radio. But we could never afford lessons or a piano." "That's precisely what we want to discuss," Dr. Harper said. "We'd like to offer May a scholarship in our Young Artist program. This would include weekly private lessons, music theory classes, and performance opportunities." Mrs. Chen's eyes widened. "A scholarship? To study here? But this is such a famous school." "Your daughter has a gift," Professor Abramowitz said simply. "We would like to help her develop it." They explained the program in more detail. The Saturday classes, the practice requirements, the evaluations. Mrs. Chen listened attentively, occasionally glancing at May, who could barely contain her excitement. "This sounds wonderful," Mrs. Chen said finally. "But I work most Saturdays and we live across town. The bus takes nearly an hour each way." "We may be able to help with transportation," Dr. Harper offered. "We have a network of volunteers, parents of other students, who assist with carpools. And as for the practice issue," Professor Abramowitz stepped in. "Each year the conservatory receives several donated pianos, instruments that are still perfectly functional, but have been replaced by their owners. We typically place these with scholarship students who need them. May could be considered for this program as well." Mrs. Chen's hand went to her mouth. "You would give us a piano?" "It would be on long-term loan," Dr. Harper clarified. "For as long as May is in the program and putting it to good use." Tears formed in Mrs. Chen's eyes. "I always promised her that someday she would have a piano. I just never thought—" May reached over and took her mother's hand, squeezing it tightly. "There is one more thing," Professor Abramowitz said, pulling out his phone. "While we've been talking, I received several messages from colleagues. It seems your performance has been seen by more people than just your classmates." He turned his phone screen toward May. On it was a social media page showing a video, Lily's, recording of May playing the Chopin Nocturne. The view counter was rapidly climbing, already over 2,000. Below it were dozens of comments. "Who is this girl?"
"She's amazing."
"Natural talent right there. No fancy training needed." "This is at the National Conservatory. That piano costs more than my car." And then, most surprisingly, a comment from the conservatory's official account. "We're as impressed as you are. Stay tuned for more from this remarkable young pianist." May stared at the screen in disbelief. "People are watching me play? Strangers?" "The internet has a way of amplifying exceptional moments," Dr. Harper said with a small smile. "Your classmate's video is being shared widely. It seems your performance has touched many people." "I hope that's okay," Professor Abramowitz added. "Our marketing department got quite excited when they saw it. They've already responded from our official account, as you can see." May felt a curious mixture of embarrassment and pride. People were watching her play, people who knew much more about music than she did. What if they heard her mistakes? What if they thought she wasn't good enough? But then again, what if this was the beginning of something she had only dared to dream about in her most private thoughts? "So," Dr. Harper said, bringing the conversation back to practical matters, "shall we proceed with the paperwork to enroll May in the Young Artist program?" "We could begin as early as next weekend." Mrs. Chen looked at May, a question in her eyes. May nodded eagerly, unable to contain her smile. "Yes," Mrs. Chen said, straightening her shoulders. "Yes, I think we shall." The week that followed May's unexpected performance at the National Conservatory passed in a blur. She returned to school the next day to find that everything had changed. Students who had never spoken to her before now smiled and waved in the hallways. Teachers stopped her to ask about her piano playing. Even the principal called her into his office to congratulate her on bringing such positive attention to the school. Lily's video had taken on a life of its own. By Wednesday, it had over 50,000 views and had been picked up by several local news websites. The comment section was filled with praise, questions, and even a few skeptics wondering if the whole thing was staged. "Did you see that someone called you the mall piano prodigy?" Priya asked as she slid into the seat next to May at lunch. It was the first time she had ever chosen to sit with May. May nearly choked on her sandwich. "They called me what?" "It's your new nickname online," Zoe explained, joining them with her tray. "Someone figured out that you practice at Golden Gate Mall and added it to the video description. Now people are showing up there hoping to see you play." "That's weird," May said, not sure how else to respond. The idea of strangers looking for her was uncomfortable. "Weird but cool," Priya insisted. "You're like famous now." May shook her head. "I'm not famous. I just played a piano." "A $200,000 piano," Lily corrected, arriving at the table with her phone in hand, after a lifetime of no lessons. While being laughed at, "It's a perfect story for social media." She held up her phone to show May the latest view count. 67 now at 892. May felt a strange mixture of embarrassment and pride. She had never sought attention, had never thought her piano playing was anything special. She had done it because she loved the feeling of making music, of bringing beautiful sounds into the world. Now people were calling her a prodigy and showing up at the mall to find her. It was overwhelming, but the most significant changes were happening at home. On Thursday afternoon, a truck arrived at their apartment complex. Two men carefully unloaded an upright piano. Not new or fancy, but solid and well-maintained. They carried it up to the third floor, where May and her mother lived, and positioned it against the living room wall exactly where Mrs. Chen indicated. "The conservatory sends its regards," one of the men said, handing Mrs. Chen some paperwork. "It's yours to use as long as your daughter is in the program." After they left, May stood before the piano, hardly able to believe it was real. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys, not pressing them yet, just feeling their smooth coolness under her fingertips. "Go ahead," her mother encouraged softly. "It's yours, May." Slowly, reverently, May sat on the bench and began to play. The sound filled their small apartment, rich, resonant, and completely different from the tinny mall piano she was used to. This piano had character, depth. It responded to her touch in ways that made her feel like she was truly speaking through the music for the first time. Mrs. Chen sat on the couch, watching her daughter play with tears in her eyes. "I always knew you were special," she said when May finished. "I just didn't know how to help you." "You did help me," May insisted. "You never told me to stop dreaming." That night, May practiced until her fingers ached. She would have continued even longer. But her mother gently reminded her that they had neighbors who might not appreciate Debussy at midnight. Reluctantly, May closed the piano lid and went to bed. But her fingers continued to move across imaginary keys as she drifted off to sleep. Friday brought another surprise. Ms. Wang stopped May in the hallway between classes, her face bright with excitement. "I've spoken with Mr. Reynolds, the music director," she said. "He's agreed to let you join the advanced piano class immediately. You'll need to catch up on the theory portions, but he's very excited to have you." "Really? But the semester is already half over," May said. "He watched your video," Ms. Wang explained with a smile. "He said, and I quote, 'Theory can be taught. What she has can't.'" So on Friday afternoon, instead of heading home after school, May found herself in the music room, being introduced to Mr. Reynolds, a tall man with curly gray hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. He assessed her abilities with a series of exercises, occasionally making notes on a clipboard. "Your technique needs work," he said frankly when they finished. "But your musicality is extraordinary. We'll start with Bach next week. His pieces will help develop your finger independence." As May gathered her things to leave, Mr. Reynolds added, "The winter concert is in 6 weeks. I'd like you to perform." May froze. "Perform? In front of everyone." "Thanks, that's very helpful," May replied dryly, though she couldn't help smiling back. The truth was, May did feel pressure, not just from external expectations, but from herself. For the first time in her life, she had access to real musical education, a proper instrument, and mentors who believed in her talent. She didn't want to let them down. More importantly, she didn't want to let herself down. For the showcase, Professor Abramovitz had assigned her Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor, a hauntingly beautiful piece that required emotional depth and technical precision in equal measure. It was more challenging than the Nocturne in E-flat major she had played during her first visit to the conservatory, but May felt connected to it in a way she couldn't quite explain. This piece requires maturity, the professor had told her when assigning it. It's not just about playing the notes correctly. It's about understanding the emotion behind them, the longing, the moments of hope, the return to melancholy. I believe you have that understanding, May. The night before the school concert, May could hardly sleep. She kept going over the Beethoven in her mind, her fingers moving across her blanket as if it were a keyboard. When she finally drifted off, she dreamed of pianos with endless keys that stretched beyond her reach. The next morning, she arrived at school early to practice in the music room. Mr. Reynolds found her there, her hands moving confidently across the keys of the school's upright piano. "Nervous?" he asked after she finished a particularly difficult passage. May nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "Good," he said with a gentle smile. "A little nervousness sharpens the performance. Just remember, you're not playing for the audience or for me. You're playing because the music deserves to be heard." Those words stayed with May throughout the day as classes dragged by. When evening finally came, she changed into the simple black dress her mother had bought for the occasion, their first new clothing purchase in months. Her hands trembled slightly as she pinned back her hair. The auditorium was packed with parents, teachers, and students. May peeked through the curtains and saw her mother sitting in the third row, wearing her good blazer and looking both nervous and proud. Next to her sat Professor Abramovitz, who had surprised May by accepting Mr. Reynolds' invitation to attend. As a featured soloist, May would perform last. She sat backstage, listening as the school orchestra played, followed by a string quartet, a flute solo, and several other performances. Each piece seemed to increase her anxiety. These students had years of training. What if she couldn't measure up? "You're on in 2 minutes," Mr. Reynolds said, appearing at her side. "Remember what I told you this morning?" May nodded, took a deep breath, and walked onto the stage when her name was announced. The applause seemed distant as she approached the piano, a much better instrument than the school's usual upright. Rented specially for the concert, she sat down, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. For a moment, she was back at the mall piano, teaching herself piece by piece. Then she was at the cardboard keyboard, hearing the music only in her mind. And finally, she was here, about to share what she had learned with everyone who had gathered to listen. The first dramatic chords of the Beethoven filled the auditorium. May felt the familiar sensation of disappearing into the music, letting it flow through her. The technical challenges that had seemed so daunting during practice now felt natural, each note falling exactly where it should. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the audience erupted in applause. May stood, somewhat dazed, and bowed as she had been taught. As she looked up, she saw her mother wiping tears from her eyes. Professor Abramovitz was nodding with approval, and her classmates, even those who had once laughed at her, were on their feet clapping enthusiastically. Backstage, Mr. Reynolds greeted her with a rare hug. "That," he said firmly, "is why we make music." The week between the school concert and the conservatory showcase passed quickly. May continued to refine her Chopin, incorporating Professor Abramovitz's suggestions during their twice-weekly lessons. He was demanding but encouraging, pushing her to find greater emotional depth in her playing. "You have the notes," he would say. "Now find the story they're telling." On the day of the showcase, the conservatory's main concert hall was filled to capacity. Families of young artists, music enthusiasts, and various dignitaries from the music world had gathered for the event. Backstage, students in formal attire adjusted bow ties and cummerbunds, tuned instruments, and battled nerves. May wore a simple blue dress that her mother had altered to fit perfectly. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore the small pearl earrings that had been her grandmother's, a family treasure saved for special occasions. Amara found her sitting quietly in a corner, eyes closed, fingers moving in silent practice. "How are you feeling?" she asked, violin case in hand. "Terrified," May admitted. "There are so many important people out there." "Forget about them," Amara advised. Just play the way you did that first day, like it's just you and the piano having a conversation no one else can understand. May smiled gratefully at her friend. I'll try. Unlike the school concert, May would be performing in the middle of the program. She listened as the first few students played, a violinist performing Paganini, a cellist playing Bach, a pianist tackling Liszt. All were impressive, with years of training evident in their polished performances. Then it was her turn. As she walked onto the stage, May saw familiar faces in the audience, her mother, of course, but also Ms. Wang, Lily, and several other classmates, and even the elderly couple who had often stopped to listen to her at the mall. News of her performance had spread, and it seemed everyone who had been part of her journey wanted to witness this moment. The Steinway concert grand waiting for her was not the same one she had played during her school tour that one remained on display in the entrance hall, but it was equally magnificent. May approached it with reverence, remembering how a similar piano had changed her life just 3 months ago. She sat, adjusted the bench, and took a deep breath. Then she began to play. The nocturne emerged from her fingers with a delicacy and emotion that surprised even her. She found herself thinking not of technique or tempo, but of her journey. The little girl watching piano videos in fascination, the determined teenager practicing on a mall piano, the student now finding her voice through music. As the piece progressed, May felt something shift within her. She wasn't playing notes on a page anymore. She was telling her own story through Chopin's haunting melody. Each phrase carried the weight of her struggles, her determination, her hope. When she reached the major key section in the middle, that brief moment of light in an otherwise melancholy piece, she thought of the day the piano had arrived at her apartment, of Professor Abramovitz telling her she had a gift, of her mother's tears of pride. The final chords faded into silence. For a moment, May remained still, hands hovering above the keys, reluctant to break the spell. Then came the applause, not just polite appreciation, but genuine, enthusiastic recognition of what they had witnessed. As May stood to bow, she saw Professor Abramovitz in the front row, applauding with uncharacteristic vigor. Beside him sat Dr. Harper, smiling broadly. And near the back, a man she didn't recognize was speaking excitedly to a companion while looking directly at her. Backstage, Professor Abramovitz found her almost immediately. "Exceptional," he said simply. "You've done the work, and it shows." Before May could respond, Dr. Harper joined them, accompanied by the man May had noticed in the audience. "May, I'd like to introduce Mr. Yamamoto from the Pacific International Piano Competition," Dr. Harper said. "He was quite impressed by your performance." Mr. Yamamoto shook May's hand warmly. "Dr. Harper has told me your remarkable story. We would be honored if you would consider entering our junior division this spring. It's a prestigious competition that could open many doors for your future." May looked from Mr. Yamamoto to Professor Abramowitz in confusion. "But I've only been taking lessons for 3 months. Wouldn't the other competitors have years of experience?" "Yes," Professor Abramowitz acknowledged. "But you have something many of them lack, a unique voice. With continued hard work, I believe you could be ready by spring." As they discussed the details of the competition, May felt a curious sense of calm. 3 months ago, she had been laughed at for approaching a piano. Today, she was being invited to compete internationally. The journey ahead would require even more dedication, more hours of practice, more technical challenges to overcome. But for the first time, May knew with absolute certainty that she belonged in this world of music. She had found her path, not because someone had given it to her, but because she had created it herself, note by note, day by day, through sheer determination and love for the piano. Later, as she left the conservatory with her mother, May paused to look up at the grand building that had become her second home. "Are you happy?" Mrs. Chen asked softly, following her gaze. May thought about the mall piano where it had all begun, about the cardboard keyboard that had helped her practice, about the journey that had led her here. She thought about the music still waiting to be discovered, the skills yet to be developed, the performances yet to be given. "Yes," she said simply, "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be."